All right, let's do it. Let's get in there. Again, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course, my pleasure.
So let's begin our journey with this. Looking at the calendar now, 6 years ago, this pandemic was raging, taking hold. How did you get through that coronavirus era, and how has it changed the way that you approach the page and life today?
Well, actually, that was very important for me finishing my first book.
Yeah.
So, my first book, which is about Myron Taylor, a man you've never heard of, but one of the most consequential people of the 20th century. I've been working on that for about 20 years, but I had, for a whole host of reasons, had not gotten through it, partly because it was an enormous archival research project, but also I had a day job.
Yeah.
And so when my wife and I decamped from our apartment in New York to come up to our house in Connecticut for a couple of weeks, that turned out to be 2.5 years, I brought all the remaining archival research with me, and I just finally bit the bullet and finished it. So the pandemic actually proved to be very, very important for my now second career because I've now finished my fourth book. My fourth book has now been published. My fifth book I've just finished, and I'm now starting my sixth book.
Wow.
So, so the pandemic, in a strange way, was very important for launching my second career.
So let's get a handle on what you did for your day job and even what you do now. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 13-year-olds at career day. And one of the kids just wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer that child?
So I handled disputes between people who wanted to sue each other. And so when people wanted to go to court, or people wanted to put people in jail, or people wanted lots of money from other people, things like that. They came to me to protect them. And that's what I did for 47 and a half years.
So, how long did you incubate this desire and love to put all of these stories about these figures on page?
I've published over 300 articles over my legal career, most of them on pretty technical legal stuff, but also uh, I did stories about historical figures, legal figures, and that sort of morphed into my one of my law professors asking me to take on this project about Myron Taylor, and that that sort of that led to where I am today. So.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream job?
So I actually wrote a job description when I was in, I think it was the third grade, that I wanted to be a lawyer and a cartoonist.
Okay.
And I've actually done both. I've actually published cartoons.
Wow. So take me back to your beginnings. What were the seeds that were planted that gave you this desire to get into law and then to be a writer and etch and weave these stories together? What did you see? What was a part of this world early on that became who you are?
Well, my father's a lawyer. My grandfather was a lawyer. My great-grandfather was a lawyer. But that really wasn't the main thing. Actually, it was just seeing my father and a lot of his friends were very prominent lawyers and did very interesting things. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool to always wake up in the morning going to do new and interesting and different things every day that most people can't say that that's what they do. And so that sort of sparked all that. I also have to confess I was a big fan of Perry Mason, still am, and thought that was pretty cool. Um, and I also, there's sort of a conceit among people who are lawyers that they're sort of the best and the brightest. And I wanted to compete in that world. And so I'm a very competitive person, and I wanted to see how I could cut my teeth among the best and the brightest.
Yeah. So who were you reading early on? Who were authors, stories, narratives that really grabbed you?
I've always been interested in history, and I was very lucky when I went to Cornell. I had two of the greatest historians in the country, if not the world, and they became not just teachers of mine, but lifelong mentors and friends. I mean, for 50 some odd years, these two men inspired my love of history and were very close friends. And so I was very lucky in that regard.
So
Very lucky.
what was the first thing that you wrote that you got a visceral response from somebody and realized that you had a gift for writing?
Well, I'm not sure about the gift part, but the visceral, interesting word. Uh, uh, I wrote some articles, which I later incorporated in a book, about some of my experiences as a young lawyer, which were pretty terrifying. And I got some visceral responses to that,
Yeah,
those articles. Um, Being a young lawyer in a very prominent law firm is both a very interesting experience and very challenging, but it's also a scary thing because you are there basically by the grace of somebody's whim. And if they don't like you one day, you literally could be gone the next day. And I had an experience like that when I was a 3-week-old lawyer at this prominent law firm where I got this assignment and I gave an answer that the partner didn't like. And I thought I was going to be fired. And turned out he was wrong and I was right. But that didn't make it any better because he was my boss. So
yeah, yeah,
it was sort of a terrifying experience. But years later, I wrote about that, and it in retrospect, it's somewhat funny, but it really wasn't at the time.
yeah. So I'm curious, living in America in 2026, coming from a legal background and a writer in history, are you frightened by what's going on right now? How do you conceptualize where we've gone and what's going on in America in 2026?
So that's actually I get that question a lot because my second book is the worst Supreme Court decisions ever.
Yeah,
And so when I speak about that book, that question in different formulations, but it's that essential question is asked a lot. I've actually written an article about that as sort of a postscript to my book because I'm much more optimistic than a lot of people are, especially if you only read certain newspapers on the East Coast of America. You would have you'd be throwing your hands up and tearing your hair out and thinking the world's coming to an end. I actually think the current Supreme Court, especially Chief Justice Roberts, is doing a very good job. And it's very, very misunderstood what he's trying to do. But what he's really trying to do is bring the three branches of government more into a proper alignment with one another. And so uh, a lot of these recent decisions, which people have said the world's coming to an end, really they don't understand that what he's trying to do is um, put more authority back into Congress and away from the executive branch.
yeah,
And that's a healthy thing. The example I always give is when the major civil rights legislation was passed in 1964 and 1965, every single person in Congress knew exactly what every word, sentence, semicolon, period, they knew exactly what every part of those bills meant. We're now in a process where Congress passes 2,000-page bills that nobody knows what's in them
yeah,
and just cedes all this authority over to the various federal agencies to make some sense out of this mess that they've thrown over there. Well, that's really not the way democracy is supposed to work. We're supposed to hold accountable people that we vote for, and we don't vote for people who work in the Environmental Protection Agency or the Labor Department
yeah,
or pick out whatever agency you want. Those people aren't accountable really to anybody.
yeah.
And that's really not the way a democracy should work. So that's really what, in the main, the court is doing. And the other thing that people don't understand, because again, the press is very, and a lot of our politicians are at fault too.
Yeah.
Um, 90% of what the Supreme Court does is very uncontroversial. And this political divide that people say, oh, there's six conservatives and three liberals. On 90% of these decisions, there's not a liberal however you define liberal, and not a conservative split. These
Yeah,
are nine people trying to do the right thing. And then on the other 10%, these are rough approximations,
sure.
the justices aren't so uniform as people think. And so putting everyone in a box all the time is not right. I actually
Yeah,
think one of the worst things that's happened in our recent times, going back to your original question, is every time you read an article or a news thing on TV about a judicial decision, whether it's the Supreme Court or by a federal district judge or by whomever, they're always identified by what president appointed them,
yeah,
as if you're getting Clinton justice or Obama justice or Bush justice or Trump justice. This is a terrible thing for Americans to have t told to them over and over and over again that justice depends on the presidential appointment, as opposed to these people are honorable people trying to do the right thing. And that's really bad for our system of justice. So I hope that will stop.
yeah,
I'm not optimistic about, but
right.
that's very bad for the general public.
Yeah, for sure. So, who's been your hero? Who's been an inspirational force in your career between law and writing?
So one of them, which I highlight a lot in this book on the Supreme Court, is John Marshall Harlan,
Yeah.
who's really one of the greatest Supreme Court justices ever. For example, he's the one dissenting vote in Plessy v. Ferguson, which was the segregation by race is constitutional. It's
Yeah.
just an awful, awful decision.
Yeah.
He's the one man who dissented on that. He's the only justice on the court at that point who had owned slaves,
Wow.
and he said this is wrong. And he one part of his dissent is very, very famous, although we've never as a country fully adopted this. He said the Constitution is colorblind. And that took a lot of courage
Yeah.
for him to do that. And he appears in other famous, mostly dissents, where it took just a lot of courage to stand up and say to the common wisdom, no, and here's why. And so he's one of my big heroes.
So talk to me about your latest book. I'm interested. You've kind of talked about how you've curated and culled these figures, but with William Henry, talk to me a little bit about how you landed on this topic and what it means to you.
So William Henry Seward's a big hero of mine,
Yeah.
has been since I was an undergraduate at Cornell. I was really introduced to him by one of the two Cornell professors that I was talking about before, because Seward is the principal architect of our westward expansion. He laid out an architectural framework for how we would go, not just to the West Coast, but more importantly to Asia. In a number of speeches he gave in the Senate in the early 1860s, he literally was talking about going to China, going to Japan, opening up those markets. And as a way to do that, he bought Midway. He bought the so-called Guano Islands as coaling stations. He obviously bought Alaska. Um, Relevant for our period today, he also, at the time he was buying Alaska, he tried to buy Greenland.
Oh, wow.
Uh, he conceptualized the Panama Canal, on and on and on. Some of this got done in his lifetime, some later by some of his successors. But he was a real visionary, a really great man. And so I got very interested in him 50 some odd years ago. And then this story about him saving the Upper South, keeping the Upper South in the Union in the so-called secession winter, is really a story that has not been told really. And to the extent it's been told by historians who think Seward was doing something wrong, that it was wrong to try to save the Union, to reach some sort of compromise to keep the Upper South and ultimately bring the so-called Cotton States back into the Union, that was somehow morally wrong, or to use a word from World War II, appeasement. that to try to compromise with slave owners was somehow morally repugnant and wrong. But that again ignores history because the country was formed with slavery in place, and the Constitution, in fact, incorporates slavery. Right, you can read it. It's right there in the
Yeah.
Constitution. So this was a compromise our founders made, thinking it would someday go away, and of course it didn't. At least it didn't peacefully. But Seward was trying to save the Union, and it's a story that um, I think should be told. It needs to
Yeah.
be told, and I'm honored to be telling it because I'm trying to. That's one of to your question before. What I'm doing with these books I'm writing, trying to tell something that's never been told before.
Yeah.
Telling something that's already regurgitating something that's already been told is sort of a boring.
Yeah.
And what's the point? But to tell people about here's a man, um, for example, the reason he didn't get to be president was because he had an enlightened view about immigration. He believed in welcoming Irish Catholics and other people from Europe and trying to incorporate them as full citizens of the country. Abraham Lincoln, on the other hand, was silent on that issue. And so, an important wing of the Republican Party, the so-called know-nothings, the people who did not like immigrants, were much more amenable to Lincoln,
Yeah.
and he won those votes at the 1860 convention, and that's why he prevailed over Seward. So he was a great man in many ways, and the only thing he actually ever disagreed with Lincoln on was Lincoln's belief. He believed well into his administration that the way to solve the issue of slavery was to recolonize all African Americans, even if they were citizens of the country, back to Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, and Seward was against that. He thought that anyone who was here in this country had something to contribute, and we wanted people who were here as Americans to contribute to the country. And that was the only thing that they disagreed on.
Wow. Digging into these historical figures that we don't know a lot about and etching their stories and going through all of the historical data, how does that make you grow as a human? What's revelatory in this process for you in your growth?
That's a great question. One, it makes me more optimistic about the country.
Yeah.
But it also, I think the more knowledge that we have about our past, the better off we are, apropos of the painting that's behind you.
Yeah.
When we try to sweep things into the dark corner and pretend they didn't exist, that doesn't help us understand uh, A, our history, but B, how to go forward. And the notion that, I mean, so for example, a lot of these decisions that I wrote about in my second book, the worst Supreme Court decisions, are so terrible that people don't know about them.
Yeah.
They're not even taught in law schools because law professors are ashamed of them.
Yeah.
Um, so Korematsu, for example, usually is not taught in law school. That's where we put 120,000 Americans in concentration camps in World War II. It's just horrible. But that's part of our history, and we should know it so that we don't do it again.
Yeah.
And we should learn from that and not use war as an excuse, for example, for bad behavior or terrible behavior. Um, and but that's part of our history. So, for example, Lincoln in the Civil War, he had a terrible record on civil liberties. He put somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people in jail without habeas corpus.
Wow.
Now, that's not to say a lot of them weren't uh, supportive of the union effort,
Yeah.
but putting people in jail without a ability to get out and say, well, we're at war, well, that leads to Franklin Roosevelt putting 120,000 Americans in concentration camps in World War II because we're at war.
Yeah.
So once you set that precedent, it's a lot easier to do it a second time or a third time. But if you don't even know about it,
Yeah.
um, then we're really worse off. So that's one of the things that excites me to tell stories that people don't know about so that we do confront the good, the bad, the ugly about being an American.
Yeah.
And again, in my mind, to still be optimistic about the country because we'll be better off if we know those things.
For sure. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You ran into the 18-year-old version of you, ready to go out and change the world. And you had a film projector next to that young version, and you hit play, and it was a 60-second highlight reel of this life you've lived. Would your young version believe your life turned out this way?
No, no, no. Um, Not at all. I'd answer your question slightly differently, and then if that's not satisfactory, I'll
Oh,
give
that's
you a
great.
different answer.
Yeah.
Um, I've known some people in my life who have planned every single detail, 4 steps, 8 steps, 12 steps, in advance, and live their lives accordingly. Um, that's not the way I've that's not the way the 18-year-old uh, me looked at this. I was sort of getting on a trolley car, seeing where it would take me, seeing what my again where my competitive abilities would rise to or not rise to, and see where that would go. And so I've been very blessed, very surprised. I never knew, for example, I would be teaching at 3 different universities for 30 years.
Yeah.
Never, wildest dreams, never imagined that. Partly because my role models, these two Cornell professors, I they were just such icons to me.
Yeah.
I never thought I would ever. I'm not saying I rose to that same level, but I never thought I'd be in the same universe.
Yeah.
Um, and to do some of the things as I did in the practice of law, I never thought I would achieve those things. Keeping someone out of jail for 33 years, uh, who was being attacked by the New York Attorney General. I never thought I had the chops to do that.
Yeah.
Um, Publishing these books, I never aspired to that, never thought about that, but here I am doing it and really enjoying it. So my 18-year-old version would sort of be, you must be kidding.
Yeah. Right.
But I think my 18-year-old version would say, okay, I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, the other way to answer that is I look back and I loved being a lawyer. Very few lawyers really like being lawyers, actually.
Yeah.
I liked it. And I like what I'm doing now. So and I like teaching. So I've been very lucky. But I could not have predicted
Yeah.
any of this.
For sure. So, of everything that you've done, accomplished, and evolved to, what are you the happiest about, the proudest of?
Boy, that's a tough question. I would guess uh, uh, the feedback I've gotten from a number of my students over the years that has been because that's completely unsolicited,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
No one's paying them to do
Yeah.
that. They've already gotten their grades or
Uh,
whatever else, they've moved on.
yeah.
And but that's so gratifying to have touched a young person's life, or in my case, numerous people's lives, and motivated them to do something, excited them, challenged them, and have them say, I did something that really meant something to them. That's you can't buy that.
Yeah.
That's something that's really a great feeling. And so I guess that's what I'd say.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, all these pockets of people, family, friends, students, readers, everyone that you've worked with in law, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah, well, not everyone has the same perception of me, that's for sure. Uh, my perception of me is I'm a very, as I say, competitive guy, um, who's always, again, gotten on the trolley car to see where the ride's going to take me. And I've been pleasantly surprised. I've been very lucky, very blessed to always find things that I enjoy doing. And I'm not trying to please other people. I'm really trying to live up to my standards. And if I don't achieve my standard, then I'm unhappy. But I'm not trying to make Joe Blow down the street think, oh, what a great guy he is, because everyone's going to have a different view of whatever. I've sort of come to terms with that a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to please anybody except really me. And but it's not an ego thing per se, but I just don't want to disappoint me. I
Yeah.
want to make sure that I'm doing my best at whatever I'm doing, and that may not be an Olympic gold medal because my best might not be at that standard, but so long as I'm doing my best, then I'm okay with that.
So if anybody wants to get the latest book, any of the books, hop on that trolley and do that, or reach out. Any of the good business, where do they go?
So my daughters, thank God, set up a website for me called cevanstewartauthor.com.
Okay.
And so all my four books currently published are accessible through that. And that's probably the best source to do any of that. Alternatively, you can just Google my name, William Henry Seward, and the Amazon thing will pop up. But
Yeah.
that website's probably the easiest.
Okay.
And then I'm very excited about my new book, which I just finished. It's about Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah.
Again, a story that's never been told about him. Uh, Not a very nice person, but a fascinating person.
Yeah.
And so I had fun with that.
I always heard that he wanted a tremendously powerful shower head.
He wanted everything to be tremendously powerful.
There you go. That sums him
He,
up.
yeah, he was quite a fellow. And so he had this book is about he actually ran four campaigns in 1960.
Wow.
So if everyone says, "Oh, Robert Caro's covered everything." Well, Robert Caro really didn't cover this.
Yeah.
So he ran for president. He actually literally ran to become Jack Kennedy's vice presidential pick. Story is not well known.
Yeah.
Ran to be elected vice president. Again, a story that's not been told. Probably uh, I should say more than probably, undoubtedly the most effective vice presidential candidate in our history. Jack Kennedy would never have been president without Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah.
And at the same time he was running for vice president, he had engineered a law with the Texas legislature 16 months before that allowed him to also run for the Senate for re-election. So
Wow.
he's running for two different offices at the same time. Like who does that, right?
Yeah.
Well, Lyndon Johnson did that.
That's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So it's
insane.
it's a cool story.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I will put all these links in the show notes. What a joy, Mr. Stewart. Thank you so much. It was great to meet you. Best of luck on this release and all the others. I really appreciate it.
It's been a real pleasure and great chatting with you.
Yeah.